Long ago, in a faraway kingdom covered in white snow and surrounded by whispering forests, there lived a beautiful and gentle queen. One winter morning, as she sat by her ebony window sewing, she pricked her finger with a needle, and 3 drops of blood fell upon the snow. As she watched the red drops sink into the whiteness, she whispered softly, "I wish I had a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as this window frame." Her wish came true, and soon after, she gave birth to a baby girl who had skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. The baby was named Snow White, but happiness did not last long, for the queen died soon after the birth, leaving the king lonely and broken-hearted. In time, the king remarried a woman of great beauty, but her heart was cruel and full of pride. She could not bear the thought of anyone being more beautiful than herself. She possessed a magical mirror that could speak, and every day she would stand before it and ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror always replied, "You, my queen, are the fairest of all." The queen was pleased by this answer, and her pride grew stronger each day. Years passed, and Snow White grew into a young woman of breathtaking beauty, with a heart pure and kind. One morning, when the queen asked her mirror the same question, the mirror replied, "You, my queen, are fair, it's true, but Snow White is fairer than you." The queen's face turned pale with jealousy. Rage filled her heart, and she could think of nothing but Snow White's beauty and how it had outshone her own. Unable to bear the thought, she summoned a huntsman and ordered him to take Snow White deep into the forest and kill her. "Bring me her heart," she commanded coldly, "so that I may know she is truly dead." The huntsman obeyed and took Snow White far into the forest. But when he drew his knife, Snow White's innocent eyes filled with tears. "Please, let me live," she begged. "I will run far away and never come back." The huntsman's heart softened, and he could not harm her. He let her go and killed a wild boar instead, taking its heart to the queen as proof of his deed. Snow White ran through the dark woods, terrified by every shadow and sound, until she found a small cottage hidden among the trees. Inside she saw tiny chairs, little cups, and 7 small beds. Exhausted from fear and hunger, she lay down on one of the beds and fell into a deep sleep. As night fell, 7 dwarfs returned home from their work in the mines. They found Snow White sleeping peacefully and were amazed by her beauty. When she awoke and told them her story, they pitied her and offered her a place to stay. "If you will cook and keep our house clean," they said kindly, "you may live here with us and you will be safe." Snow White gratefully agreed. The dwarfs warned her never to open the door to strangers while they were away at work, and she promised to obey. Meanwhile, the wicked queen again stood before her mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror, on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" To her horror, the mirror replied, "Queen, you are fair, it is true, but Snow White, beyond the mountains with the 7 dwarfs, is still fairer than you." The queen's fury returned, stronger than before. Disguising herself as an old peddler woman, she filled a basket with bright-colored laces and went to the dwarf's cottage. When Snow White saw her, she hesitated, remembering the dwarf's warning. But the old woman's kind voice and gentle smile deceived her. "Lovely laces for a lovely girl," she said. Snow White opened the door, and the old woman tied the new lace so tightly around her waist that Snow White fell down as if dead. The queen laughed cruelly and left her there. When the dwarfs returned, they found Snow White on the floor. They loosened the laces, and she began to breathe again. When she awoke, she told them what had happened, and they warned her again never to open the door to anyone. But the queen was not finished. When she asked her mirror again, it gave the same answer. "Snow White is still fairer than you." Enraged, the queen disguised herself once more, this time as an old woman selling combs. She went to the cottage and offered Snow White a beautiful comb. The girl refused at first, but the old woman's gentle words persuaded her to let her comb her hair. The moment the poisoned comb touched her scalp, Snow White fell lifeless once again. When the dwarfs returned, they found her motionless and removed the comb, reviving her once more. Snow White promised never again to trust a stranger, yet the queen's jealousy knew no end. She prepared her most evil plan, a poisoned apple. It was red and shiny on one side and white on the other. Disguised as a poor farmer's wife, she went to the cottage one last time. "Don't be afraid," she said kindly. "I will eat half, and you can have the other." The queen bit the white side, and Snow White bit the red. Instantly, Snow White fell to the floor, her lips still red but her body cold as snow. The queen's eyes glittered with victory as she returned to her castle. "Now the mirror will speak the truth," she whispered, and when she asked, "Mirror, mirror, on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" it finally replied, "You, my queen, are the fairest of all." At last, she was satisfied. The dwarfs returned home to find Snow White lying lifeless. They could not wake her and wept bitterly. Believing her dead, they placed her in a glass coffin in the forest, for her beauty was so great that they could not bear to bury her. Time passed, and Snow White remained as lovely as ever, her cheeks pink and her lips red, as if she were only sleeping. One day, a young prince riding through the forest came upon the glass coffin. When he saw Snow White, he was struck by her beauty and said to the dwarfs, "Please let me take her with me. I cannot bear to be without her." When the wicked queen heard that a new young queen had been crowned and was more beautiful than any other, she grew curious and asked her mirror the same question again. The mirror replied, "O queen, you are fair, it's true, but the young queen is fairer than you." Enraged, she decided to attend the wedding and see for herself. But when she arrived and saw Snow White alive and radiant in her wedding gown, her jealousy overwhelmed her. Her heart filled with such rage that she could not move. The dwarfs, moved by his sincerity, agreed. As the prince's servants carried the coffin, one of them stumbled, and a piece of the poisoned apple that had been stuck in Snow White's throat was dislodged. She gasped, opened her eyes, and looked around in confusion. The prince was overjoyed and told her everything that had happened. Snow White smiled, and her heart filled with gratitude. Soon after, they returned to his kingdom and were married in a grand ceremony filled with joy and celebration. And her own evil consumed her until she fell and never rose again. Peace finally returned to the kingdom, and Snow White and the prince lived happily ever after, surrounded by love, kindness, and the beauty of truth. The story of Snow White teaches that true beauty lies not in outward appearance but in the purity of one's heart. Envy and jealousy destroy those who hold them, while innocence and kindness are always rewarded in the end.